the 11th hour of the 11th day of the 11th month of 1918, hostilities ceased. The war to end all wars. 11/11/11, exactly 100 years ago. World War I had been raging for 4 long years, leaving 9 million soldiers dead and 21 million wounded. Germany, Russia, France, and Great Britain each lost around 1 million soldiers. The United States suffered 116,000 losses, about twice the number of those lost in Vietnam. By the end of the war, Germany was running out of soldiers and supplies, and the country was facing imminent invasion. And on November 11, 1918, German leaders met with Allied leaders. They met in a railroad car in France, and there they signed an armistice agreement, a temporary suspension of hostilities. World War I was over, and no more blood would be shed. And then the remembrances began. 1 year later, November 11th was declared in many countries to be Armistice Day. It became a federal holiday in the United States in 1938, and later, in the aftermath of World War II and the Korean War, the name was changed to Veterans Day. The day is now a holiday dedicated to American veterans of all our wars. I think 76 or so, the date was changed rather than the 11th to the Monday because of the weekend and all that stuff. There you go. In Canada, this holiday is called Remembrance Day. Red poppies were sold to raise money for veterans. I still remember the red poppies being sold. These flowers are symbols of World War I. They're tied to the poppies that began to grow after the burial of fallen soldiers in Flanders Field Cemetery, located in Belgium. The poem In Flanders Field by John McCrae includes the lines, "In Flanders fields the poppies blow, between the crosses, row on row. We are the dead. Short days ago we lived, felt dawn, saw sunset glow. Loved, and were loved, and now we lie in Flanders Field." In Great Britain and in other European countries, 2 minutes of silence are observed at 11 a.m. on every November 11th. This morning we're going to take just a minute at 11 o'clock and do likewise. To serve as a remembrance of those men and women who have served our country. We've been observing this holiday for 100 years. And the fact that it falls on Sunday gives us an opportunity to reflect on the veterans who gave their lives. The color of this day is red from the poppies of Flanders Field, the blood that's been sacrificially shed. And today we remember the significance of sacrifice. The letter to the Hebrews speaks of Jesus as the one who came to remove sin by the sacrifice of himself. He shed his own blood on the cross, once and for all. Jesus was not like the high priest in the Jerusalem temple who entered the holy place year after year with the blood that was not his own, we're told in Hebrews. The blood of a sacrificial animal sins of many. The color of the day is red. The red poppies are associated with veterans. The color red reminds us of the blood of Christ on the cross. But what is the true significance of sacrifice offered by veterans and by Jesus? When veterans make their sacrifice, they give up their own security for the security of others. They put themselves in harm's way to protect their family members, their friends, neighbors from danger. Following the example of Jesus, they show a willingness echoed in Jesus' words, "My command is this: love each other as I have loved you." Greater love My command is this: love each other as I have loved you. Greater love has no one than this, to lay down one's life for one's friends. But not every veteran is a fighter. Desmond Doss was a devout Christian who refused to touch a weapon or to work on the Sabbath, for that matter. He enlisted in the army during World War II because he believed in the cause. And he offered himself to be a combat medic. At first, the Army wanted absolutely nothing to do with him. A National Public Radio documentary filmmaker said that, quote, "he just didn't fit into the Army's model of what a good soldier would be," end quote. Members of his battalion considered him a pest. They saw him as a slacker. They threw shoes at him when he was praying. But at Okinawa, in the spring of 1945, Doss and his company faced a grueling task, a bloody task. They had to climb a steep, jagged cliff and face thousands of heavily armed Japanese soldiers. Under heavy fire, Doss climbed a ridge and crawled from wounded soldier to wounded soldier, dragging them to safety. He was praying the whole time, "Lord, please help me get one more." In the end, Doss saved 75 men over the course of 12 hours. The soldiers who had shamed him now praised him, and his captain described him as one of the bravest men alive. President Harry Truman awarded Doss the Medal of Honor in 1945, and more than 70 years later, he was the hero of the movie Hacksaw Ridge. He was and is an example of a veteran who gave up his own security for the security of others, both on the battlefield and back at home. When Jesus made his sacrifice, he he appeared once for all at the end of the age to remove sin by the sacrifice of himself. We read that in verse 26. Through his death on the cross, Jesus bore the sins of many, and the result is that we are restored to a right relationship with God. The sacrifice of Christ is good news for all of us who struggle with sin and guilt. But it's not immediately clear how the death of Jesus removes sin and brings us back into the proper relationship with God. To understand how this works, we need to step back and take a look at what Jesus faced in Jerusalem, a struggle that was every bit as harrowing as fighting at Okinawa. Presbyterian pastor Mark Sandlin points out that one of the most significant factors that put Jesus on the cross was his actions in the temple courtyard. Jesus entered the courtyard during Holy Week, knowing that he was entering the religious, political, and economic power center of the region of Judah. He knew exactly what he was doing, fully aware that he would have been seen as a threat. His words and actions were in full view of Roman guards who were there to arrest and eliminate anyone who was viewed as an opponent of Roman power. So why did Jesus die? He died because he offended the power people and challenged the status quo. He could have remained silent, but he didn't. Instead, he spoke up for and helped the people around him who were being stepped on, used, and abused. Sandlin said that, quote, Jesus died on a cross to show us what love looks like in action. Now, we shouldn't be surprised that Jesus did this. After all, he's the one who said to his followers, no one has greater love than this, to lay down one's life for one's friends. Like Desmond Doss and others who have given up their own security for the security of others, Jesus showed us what love in action looks like. What made Christ's sacrifice unique was that it was offered once to bear the sins of many. Now, the sins of many are any things that separate people from God and from each other. These sins are any unloving words or any unloving actions that drive wedges between people. Those words or actions are the very things that destroy relationships. And when Jesus died on the cross, he showed true sacrificial love in action in a way that had the power to restore broken relationships and to change people forever.